Welcome to Momentum, a show where we break down the biggest issues facing women's sports, brought to you by Binge. I'm Kat Sasso, and each week I'll be joined by some of the biggest names in women's sports, athletes, experts, and trailblazers as we dive deep into the world of women's sport. From the grassroots to the global stage, we'll explore the full spectrum of challenges, victories, and everything in between. This is your inside look at the real stories, the hard conversations, and the exciting momentum driving change. This week, I'm joined by Wallaroos and New South Wales Waratahs rugby player Georgie Friedrichs. Let's get into it. If you've ever watched women's rugby, you know it's a game full of intensity, skill, and unrelenting passion. But what you might not realise is just how much it takes to get to the top of this sport, especially as a woman in a field that's still growing and evolving. Today's guest is someone who's been at the forefront of that evolution. Georgie Friedrichs is not just an elite rugby player, she's a champion for women in the sport. As a key member of the Wallaroos, Australia's national women's rugby team, Georgie has always been a part of a generation of athletes working tirelessly to elevate the game, break down barriers, and inspire the next generation of players. But the journey hasn't been easy. From fighting for equal recognition to dealing with the financial struggles that many female athletes face, Georgie's story is one of resilience and dedication. Her path reflects the growth and challenges of women's rugby in Australia, a sport that is finally getting the attention it deserves, but still has a long way to go. In today's episode, we'll talk about Georgie's journey, the state of women's rugby in Australia, and what needs to happen for the sport to grow. We'll explore how far women's rugby has come and where it's headed as we continue to push for more visibility. Georgie, thanks so much for joining me today. You've had a very impressive career so far. Can you take us back to when you first started playing rugby, how that started for you?
I think growing up, I was a big touch head. I played lots of touch. And then sort of towards the end of my schooling years, um, the rugby sevens got announced at the Olympics,
Mm.
and so everyone kind of jumped on that ship, and a bunch of my friends started playing sevens. So I thought, why not me too? So, um, yeah, I played in. I think it was the inaugural national schoolgirls championship for Queensland, and then kind of never looked back since.
That's awesome. And you've obviously had the opportunity now to represent Australia at the highest level. What does it mean to wear the Wallaroos jersey for you?
I think it's pretty special. I mean, it encompasses all the hard work that you put in, obviously, to get to that level, as well as the sacrifices, like not only myself, but my family, my friends have all made. And to be able to represent your country, I think something special.
Yeah, and what was your first experience like in that environment?
Um, well, it was 2022, so we were kind of just coming out of that sort of COVID era. Um, we hadn't had a lot of lead up into it, and then it was in Brisbane we played. So it was at home, which was really special. Had all my friends and family there as well. I think there was like 11 debutantes that game as well. So really cool to share that experience for the first time
Yeah.
with them as well. Um, and yeah, just special playing at home, and then we also got the win as well. So very fond memories.
And how important is it for you to have your friends and family to support you? Obviously, you're playing in New South Wales and you're from Queensland, but how important is it when you are there to have that kind of backing and that kind of support?
Yeah, it makes it really special. I mean, um, my husband, he lives down here, so I can always hear him on the sideline. You probably hear him over the broadcast as well. But my mum and my sister, they travel a lot to come and watch me play. My sister has two young daughters as well, so getting to play in front of them is, I think, really cool. My nieces both wear little jerseys with G Fred on them
That's
on the back,
great.
which is really awesome to see. Inspiring them as well.
And again, you are a woman in a sport which has got so much potential and it's up and coming, and there's so many more eyes on women's rugby. How important is it for you to be able to be a role model to those young girls to look up to you and look at you and think, "Oh, I can actually do that one day. I can be like her."
Yeah, it's. I mean, like the more we're out there playing in front of, young girls, young boys even, to inspire them to, play and show them that it's possible with hard work and whatnot to be able to get to this level. Not even just this level, just playing in general and how much fun it is at all levels, I think is really important.
And you've been a part of some really important moments in the history of women's rugby in Australia. For you, what would you say is what stands out to you as a turning point for the sport here?
Um, I think the Women's World Cup 2021, we played it in 22. That was a really big turning point. Um, it was played in New Zealand, and they're really big on rugby, and they put on a really good World Cup. Um, and it was just, I don't know, advertised and shown so much more than previous World Cups.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the Black Ferns winning that as well, I think it was like a huge shift in the sport. And now we've got like the Sevens girls coming over wanting to play, not just in Australia, but all over the world as well. I think the game's really growing.
Yeah, and Ilona Ma has been sort of a trailblazer for women's rugby since she became a big TikTok star, but also she is a professional rugby player. What is your take on her role in pushing the game forward and giving it more visibility?
I think she's great. I mean, she promotes so much positivity um, around the sport, and she does it in like a way that's really relatable. I mean, she doesn't take herself too seriously. So she makes it really fun and enjoyable. And yeah, I think the message that she is putting out there is in really good light of the sport.
Hmm.
And hopefully, a lot more people want to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, and speaking of an Olympic superstar, when the inclusion of the women's rugby was announced for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, how do you think that kind of changed the perception of women's rugby, not just in Australia, but globally?
Um, I think it was massive. Like, obviously, a lot more funding was poured into the sport all over the world. So you've got people wanting to participate. It's growing the sport. It's another big goal to aim for a lot of athletes as well, because that's the pinnacle of sport is playing in the Olympics. So um, yeah, I think the inclusion of sevens in the Olympics was massive for the sport.
Hmm. And do you feel like women's rugby is starting to get the same attention as the men's game in terms of sponsorships and media rights, or do you think there's a lot more that needs to be done?
There's still a disparity between the two. It's obviously the gap is slowly, very slowly closing. Um, but you look over to like the Six Nations and what they're doing over there, like they're selling the women's game, is selling out stadiums, and like so much potential in the Southern Hemisphere for us to do that as well.
Hmm.
Um, just having like standalone games, promoting us and all that sort of stuff. I think the men's market is like obviously they have such a established product, um, and we're slowly getting there. And the men's game is so saturated, and obviously there's so much potential in the women's that's untapped.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and what kind of changes do you think you'd like to see to promote the women's game more and give it more visibility and put it out there more to the mainstream media?
I think with the Super W, I think obviously having more games would be awesome. We had um, pretty big crowds this year, but such a short tournament that it's not huge opportunity for people to be able to come and see us. So just small changes like having maybe 2 rounds before finals would be awesome. Starting there with Wallaroos, we've got up to about ten tests this year.
Hmm.
I think, which is the most we've ever had, which is awesome. Um, it's hard to like fit more tests into that, but I think yeah, just keep promoting, having it on free to air, I think we're on Stan Sport at the moment, which obviously is a subscription based platform, but having more games free to wear, um, similar to what the league is doing, they do it really well. I think promoting their women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've seen over the last couple of years that women's sports in general have just exploded. The interest in women's sports, whether it might be rugby or soccer or whatever it might be, the interest has increased massively. Where do you see the biggest potential for growth for the Wallaroos and for women's rugby here in Australia?
I think just promoting like individuals and their personalities and not sort of keeping us in a vanilla box,
Yeah.
like Ilona Ma, like she's expressed herself and like her personality. And that's obviously people gravitate towards that because it's relatable. I think, yeah, just letting people express themselves, be themselves, um, so the general public can, relate and follow and get around that.
Yeah, and how important do you think it is to actually give players a platform to tell their story and to be authentic to themselves in order to connect with the fans?
I think it's really important because obviously if you can't see them, how are you meant to connect with them?
Mm.
So, really promoting players on social media um, is important. We've Wallaroos have um, been in the last sort of 6 months really pushing that
Yeah.
and working with us as athletes um, to be able to promote ourselves.
Mhm.
I think it's really been been cool.
And looking at this current state of women's rugby in Australia, what do you think are the biggest changes that need to happen to elevate the game? Is it like more financial support, better pathways, anything else that you think of?
Um, I think probably starts like at the grassroots, having those pathways. It's the sport's grown like within the schoolgirls sort of pathway, and then like financially, we're definitely getting there. Like I'm able to live on just my rugby alone, which is great. Definitely nowhere near some of the men's contracts, but like that's obviously going to take time, and probably won't see in my in my era, unfortunately. But hopefully, um, girls in the future will be able to be up up there what the men are earning.
Yeah, and what are the biggest changes that you've kind of noticed, especially in grassroots and the pathways to professional rugby, since you were playing?
I think definitely a lot more resources are going into sort of the lower level rugby, like um, physios, coaches, training, opportunities, access to facilities as well is huge. And obviously it always can be better. But I think from when I started playing to where we are now, I think it's grown heaps.
Yeah, and what is your hope for the next generation of women's players that are coming through? Are we starting to see better pathways for them?
Yeah, definitely. Like we're starting with the schoolgirls. Hopefully they can start from under sixes and play all the way through and not have to sort of stop playing with the boys when they're 12 and then there's that gap to end of school year. So hopefully we can have all girls competitions from primary school all the way through to opens.
Yeah. And if you were the person in charge of being able to make the changes that you think need to be made, what would you do and what would you implement to move the game forward?
Oh, that's a
That's a
hard
big question.
question.
I
That's a
know. I
hard
put you on the
question.
spot.
And there's so many ways you can do it. I don't know how you go about it. I mean, it's about my payroll.
In an ideal world, what like for you, what would you do? And for you in your head, what do you think would be the best way to improve it from a grassroots level all the way up to the peak elite level?
I think just giving girls equal opportunity that the boys get, all the way through school years into opens. I think ideally coming out of school, you'd love to sign girls straight onto a full time contract and have them in the system from straight out of school,
Mm.
like the boys do, whether it's like on an academy based level or straight into the super teams. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And notoriously, women's sports have always been underrepresented, underfunded. Female athletes have always been underpaid. How important do you think it is for players like yourself and anyone else, any kind of female athlete, how important do you think it is for you guys to kind of challenge the status quo, whether it's fighting against financial disparity or treatment off the field, if women's rugby and women's sports are going to move forward?
I think it's super important to challenge it because if we don't challenge it, then we won't see change.
Hmm.
Um, if we just stay quiet and let things keep on going as they are, then people think it's okay and that we can just keep on going as it is. So yeah, challenging I think is really important to see change.
Yeah, and you've always been such an advocate for your sport and for women in your space. How do you personally cope with the stress and the pressure of balancing, advocating for yourself and for your teammates and for other women playing rugby with your performance on the field?
I mean, it's definitely a hard one. Like you want to speak out and you know tell everyone your real thoughts, but then in the back of your mind, you also these people you're speaking against, they're the people that are paying you. So
Yeah.
it's finding a way to do it correctly and respectfully, and as well as getting your ideas across.
And how do you think, leagues and clubs and national governing bodies, how do you think that they can better support female athletes and women in rugby specifically? How do you think that they can actually support you guys to feel as though you are being supported and your views and your issues actually matter?
Um, I think just sitting us down and listening to us and getting feedback from us on what we actually place value on and what we need and obviously changes can't be made overnight, but at least if we feel like we're being heard and we see small changes, then we feel like we've been heard. I think is
Yeah.
important.
And for players that might be out there who are possibly in a situation where they're scared to speak up or they're kind of feeling like a bit intimidated to speak up, what advice would you give them?
Um, I think definitely think about it a lot before you go and post it all over social media. Um, I know, talk to friends, family, get support. Um, if you're feeling this way, there's probably a lot of other people in the same position that are feeling that way. And if you can come together and sort of brainstorm a way that you can um, get your message across in the right way so that you are heard and not just being brushed aside, I think is really important.
Yeah, of course. And you just brought up social media. How do you cope with being a female athlete, having social media and being able to see some of the things that people inevitably do say about women, women's sports? And there's a lot of positivity and negativity, but how do you cope with that?
Um, I think it's definitely dependent on the individual.
Mm.
Like, I'm not a huge person on social media. I sort of post my happy snaps every now and then when I remember to, but um, I think remembering that the people writing these comments, they're not in the position that you are, um, and they're probably half tenth of the ability that you have. So just remembering that it's one person's opinion and that doesn't define you.
Yeah. And where do you see yourself and women's rugby in the next 5 to 10 years? How do you want your legacy to be remembered?
Well, I'm probably coming towards the end of my career. I hate to say it, but the old knees don't know how long they'll last. But we've got a World Cup coming up, a home World Cup coming up in 2029. So I think um, Australia, Australian rugby getting behind that, really promoting us and yeah, getting the most out of we can out of that World Cup, like New Zealand did, would be awesome.
Yeah. Going back to being an advocate for women in sports, because I think as someone like you've had a great career so far and you've achieved really great things, but almost as important as what you're achieving on the field is what you're achieving off of the field. And you speaking up and you being supportive of your teammates and the women playing rugby, for you, how do you feel? Do you feel content knowing that you're doing everything, you've done what you can and you're doing everything that you can to kind of speak up, make people aware of the things that are wrong and giving them an opportunity to change it?
I think it's also being a small part of that. There's always things to be done, and yeah, I think just proud of that small part of history that we played to create, start creating the change. I think is awesome. But yeah, like I said, there's still so much to be done, and whether I can do it or the next generation can do it, is important.
Yeah. So this season on Momentum, we're putting together our very own playbook to success. So I'm asking every one of our guests to give me their holy grail piece of advice. Might be professional advice, might be, lifestyle advice, might be a beauty hack, might be sporting advice, training advice. I want to know what your holy grail piece of advice is for you that you think guarantees success.
I think in sport, I think setting small goals, I think is important. You're obviously going to have your ultimate goal that you want to reach, but to get there, you got to set small goals that you can tick off along the way, because you're not going to get to your big goal overnight. So yeah, I think small goals, reaching them, and then slowly climbing your way to your big goal.
And if you could go back in time and you could talk to yourself as a young girl who is kind of starting out in rugby or maybe not even there yet, what would you tell her?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is, isn't it?
I think just staying in the moment, enjoying small things along the way. I think too many times I'd be looking forward to the next thing and not actually enjoying where I was now. I think you look back and those are the times of your lives, but at the time you're wishing for the next thing to come along.
Yeah, I think especially in Australia, I feel like everyone's always so concerned about what's going to happen next, what's happening next, that you don't really get the opportunity to enjoy what's happening now.
Yeah,
So that's a really
exactly.
good one. And now to young girls who might be watching this, who might have aspirations to be a professional athlete, what is one piece of advice that you can give them?
I think just lock in,
Yeah,
It's my
that's
my
the motto.
my little motto. I think lock in, whether it's, wanting to get fitter, locking into that, or stronger, locking into that. I think, just locking in. Um, a big one I struggle with is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just tell someone to have confidence,
Yeah.
but um, I think working on, your little weaknesses, I think, gives you a lot more confidence to know that you've done the work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Georgie. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really awesome to hear your story. And I'm really excited to see where your journey takes you next. And to everyone at home, thank you so much for tuning in to Momentum. Of course, you can catch us anywhere you get your podcasts and on Binge. Make sure to keep up with us on socials at The Momentum Show. I've been Kat Sasso, and I'll see you next time.